Shalom Aleichem and welcome everyone as we're back together preparing this week for Shabbat, Parashat Vayechi. Hazak, Hazak, bin Hazak, Baruch Hashem. We are now privileged to come to the conclusion of the book of Genesis, of Sefer Bereshit. And what a parsha it is. The parsha starts off, we know it's about really Yaakov Avinu passing away. And again it starts off, Vayechi Yaakov, like we had when Sarah Imenu was passing away, Vayuhayi Sarah, which was the life of Sarah. And here we're saying, Vayechi Yaakov, and Yaakov was living in Eretz Mitzrayim. You know, Benjamin Franklin once said that nothing is for certain except for death and taxes, right? Nothing in this world is for certain. And he was really talking about the Constitution. It was just being made at that time, and it had promised to last forever. And he's like, we don't know. Nothing's for certain except for death and taxes. You know, that's the way we think. People come into the world, people die. But in Judaism, sometimes we say something a little bit different, right? We all know that we sing Mazel Tov, Siman Tov, and then we say David Melech Yisrael, Hai V'Kayam, talking about King David, who lived so long ago, and we say Hai, he's alive, V'Kayam, and he continues to exist. You know, so is King David dead or is he alive? What are we saying? Interestingly enough, in the Gemara Masechet Ta'anit, when it comes to Yaakov Avinu, it says, Amarle, Rav Yitzchak said to Rav Nachman, Hachi Amar Rabbi Yohanan. This is what Rabbi Yohanan said. Yaakov Avinu lo met. Yaakov Avinu never died. So, you know, Rav Nachman says, Amarle says, what do you mean? But it says in the Pasuk, it's like, in the Psukim in the Torah, it's going to say they eulogized him, they mummified him, they did all these different things that you would do to a dead person. How could you say he never died? Samuel Yitzchak said to him, I'm darshaning a pasuk. There's a pasuk in Yirmiyahu that it says over there, and you fear not my servant Yaakov. Hashem says to Yaakov, do not fear. Do not become broken, Israel. I will deliver you from afar. And I will deliver you from afar, Yaakov. I'll help you out. And your seed and your children from their land of captivity. So Rav Yitzchak says, Makish hu azara. I'm comparing the pasuk. The pasuk says that Hashem is going to save Yaakov, and He's going to save His children. And the children of Yaakov, the descendants, the seed of Yaakov, Zaracha, they're still alive. We're all still here. And it says that Hashem is going to save Yaakov also. That means, Ma zaro b'haim, just like Yaakov's descendants are still alive, Av hu b'haim, so too Yaakov Avinu is alive. So seems to be that death is not for certain. Apparently, Yaakov Avinu is still alive. How do we understand this? In this week's parasha, Yaakov Avinu tells Yosef, I need you to bury me in Eretz Yisrael. And Yosef says, Anochi eseh kidvarecha. I will do as you say. And we're going to get into these words in a few minutes in our next lesson. But the Baalei Tosfot, the Dazekenim, says, what did Yosef say? Anochi eseh kidvarecha. I'm going to do like you said. You know what Yosef HaTzadik was saying? He says, Yaakov Avinu, you're asking for you to be buried in Eretz Yisrael? I'm going to copy you. And when it's my time to die, I'm also going to ask for that they bury me in Eretz Yisrael. That's what happened to Yosef HaTzadik. Yosef HaTzadik passed away, right? And then he told them, you got to make sure that my bones are taken up to Eretz Yisrael. That's the end of this week's parsha, right? Not only that, Rabbeinu Bechaya says that when Yosef HaTzadik says at the end of the parasha, take my bones up to Eretz Yisrael, he was telling the brothers, you should do the same. And we find them. It says that everybody's bones were taken up. And Yosef HaTzadik says, you know why you should do the same? Because our father is doing it. So, Yosef HaTzadik says, I'm learning from my father. He wants his body to be buried in Eretz Yisrael. I want my body. I'm going to tell my brothers to do the same. There's something that we have to put together. The Gemara in Masechet Nidat tells us that there are three partners, right? There are three partners in the creation of a human, right? There's the, ever since Adam Rishon was created, there's always going to be three partners. It's going to be a mother, a father, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. One of the things that the father gives, the Gemara says, is the father gives the bones, the whites. He gives the bones. We know, and we talked about it in the past a few times, that the son is a connection of the father, right? This famous story about the boy, the man who was didn't have anyone to say Kaddish for him, or so he thought, and then they found his son, and they were able to say Kaddish for him, and he was able to get, because his son sanctified Hashem's name, he was able to fix up his father's problems in the next world. We said this story in the past, I don't want to elaborate at this moment. But we know that the son has a connection to the father. That's why they say Kaddish, that's why they do mitzvot for the parents, because he's them, and he can change something about them. Let's look at Yaakov for a second. Yaakov realizes who Yosef Tzaddik is, right? Yaakov teaches Yosef all the Torah that he was taught. Yaakov loves Yosef. He gives him a Ketov Pasim. He deals with him more and more and more. What's going on? That Yosef says, I'm going to copy you. Yosef says, I'm going to be buried like you. Yosef learns everything from Yaakov. We have to understand. Chachamim tell us that tzaddikim are alive even after they're dead. That in their death, they're still considered alive. How? Through
their children.
Through their children. But how through their children? Through the ma'asim tovim of their children. Right? The child's, the tzaddik's deed, his name, his memory, and the stuff he did remain forever. But even more so if the child follows in the father's footsteps and the child continues in those good things. That's Yosef HaTzadik. Yaakov knew Yosef HaTzadik is the continuation. Yosef HaTzadik says, Yaakov, you're asking me to bury you? I'm going to do the same thing because I'm copying you. Yaakov Avinu is not dead. You know why he's not dead? Not that he's not dead. He's dead. He's God. No, he's not here. You can't find him. He's not alive. He's not sitting at a table. He's not eating. He's in the next world. But Yaakov Avinu lo met because we, his children, are still here. We are still connected to Yaakov Avinu. We're following in his good name. We're following his deeds. Yaakov Avinu, who lived in exile. We're living in exile. We only learned how to deal with our neighbors and how to survive because of Yaakov Avinu. Shlomo Shadron, the Chassadik Lebracha, told a story that happened in the year 1953. This was a year that the Hazon Ish of Avraham Yeshaya Karlitz, the Chassadik Lebracha, passed away. There were two religious Jews taking a cab, and they were driving through Bnei Brak in the taxi. And one said to the other, you know, Bnei Brak is not what it used to be. There used to be a Hazon Ish. Everybody knew his house. Everybody went to him. It was a big tzaddik in our midst. There's no more Hazon Ish. Bnei Brak is not the same. And the taxi driver, a non-religious Jew, says to them, you don't know what you're talking about. He says, they say, what do you mean? He says, the Hazon Ish, he's still alive. So what do you mean? His Levi was a few months ago. He's gone. He says, no, he's alive and I'll prove it to you. He says, how? He says, let me tell you a story. He says, about 3 years ago, my daughter was giving birth. We all went to the hospital with her, and there were complications. And hours were going by, and the doctors came out and they told us they think it's going to be very, very bad tragedy. Situation's going to happen, not good. Something's going to happen. And he says, I got so scared, I didn't know what to do. And there was there an old religious nurse, and she came over and she told me, she advises me to go to Bnei Brak and to go get a bracha from the Hazon Ish. So he says, that's what I did. I didn't know who Bnei Brak, I didn't know, I just took a taxi to Bnei Brak. I saw people, I said, where's the Hazon Ish's house? And they pointed me in the direction. I got there and I told the Hazon Ish my story. I told him the difficulty. He looked at me. Hazon Ish smiled at me. And he said, you should go back to the hospital. Your daughter already had the baby. Mazal tov v'siman tov. And he says, I wanted to believe him, but I didn't believe him. He's just sending me away. But I get back to the hospital. The minute I get there, I'm told my daughter already had the baby. Baruch Hashem, daughter and the child, everyone's fine. And now the story continues, he says. He says, just about a month ago, my daughter again was giving birth. And we came to the hospital, and the exact same story. Complication after complication. The doctor says it's looking bad. And I didn't know what to do. And I said, this time I'm not going to wait for someone to tell me to go Hazonish. I know where to go. I took the taxi and I went to Bnei Brak. I went to the street where I thought his house was. And I saw someone on the street and I said, is this the house of the Hazonish? I need to go get a bracha from him. And the man told me, didn't you hear? The Hazon Ish passed away. And I couldn't believe him. I said, no, I just need a bracha from him. I need to talk to him. The man said, he's not here anymore. He passed away. He says, but I need to go to the Hazon Ish. Where can I go? I need to see him. The man says, if you want to go to the Hazon Ish, this is his grave. You can go to his kever. It showed him directions to go to the graveyard, to go to the gravesite. So the man says, I went. I found his kever. I found his grave. And I started to pray. I said, please, you helped me last time. You got to pray for me again. Help my daughter. She's in a terrible matzav, terrible situation. Please help. And he says, I was there davening, praying, please help me. And all of a sudden, I heard him say to me, Mazal Tov. I look up and I see the Hazon Ish's face. And he tells me Mazal Tov. And he tells me everything's okay. Go back to the hospital and you'll see your daughter already gave birth. I couldn't believe it. I ran, I got a cab, I came back to the hospital. And just like the Hazon Ish said, my daughter gave birth again and everything was okay. And he says to these two religious Jews, and you saying that Hazon Ish is gone, that he passed away. He's not gone. I saw him myself. When we learn the Torah, we learn the Talmud, we learn about our Chachamim, our Gedolim, and we mention their names, and we say what they taught, and we learn from them, and we put it into our lives, and we actually use the stuff that they tell us. Then what are we doing? We're keeping all our Gedolim alive as well. Yaakov Avinu lo met. Because dying in Judaism is far from certain. Unlike Benjamin Franklin said. Because we leave behind children and students that continue in the path of the Torah, in the path of our Gedolim, in the path of our Avot. May we be zochet to be part of those who keep Judaism alive, who keep all our ancestors and our Chachamim, our Gedolim, alive, the way we behave, act, and think. Rabotai, for our second lesson, we mentioned that Yosef HaTzadik said, Anochi eseh chidvarecha. Yaakov said, bury me. He said, I'm going to do like you said. And the next pasuk says, Yaakov Avinu says, swear to me. And Yosef HaTzadik swears. So here in the Eitz HaChaim, he explains, I think this is a famous explanation, why did Yaakov have to make him swear? Yaakov Avinu said, what are you telling me? Anochi eseh chidvarecha. I'm going to do what I can, like you told me. Yosef HaTzadik was saying, whatever I can possibly do, I'll do. But you should know that Paro may not let me, right? There's no vacation time for or for leaders. You can't leave. You can't leave Mitzrayim. Can't go out. So Yaakov says, I see. In order to guarantee it, I have to make you make a swear. Why? Because you swore to Paro that you're not going to tell anybody that he doesn't know Lashon HaKodesh, he doesn't know one language more than you, right? You know one more than him. You're not going to tell anybody. So then, if he's going to tell you, break your promise to your father, then you'll say, I have to break my promise to you and let everybody know that I know more than you, right? So this is the famous explanation that everybody knows. But I saw this week, in the Eitz HaChaim over here, another beautiful explanation of what Yosef HaTzadik was saying. Anochi eseh chidvarecha. That I will do like you told me. Again, from Rav Shalom Shvadron, Zecher Tzadik L'Bracha, our second story from Rav Shalom Shvadron. Hashem Shadron said that he once had a son that got very, very sick. And they needed a cure. And a great Rav saw Rav Shalom Shadron being so depressed and told him, what's the problem? And he told him, he said, I have the cure for your son. Take a boat ride, go on the ocean with your son who's sick, and after the boat ride, everything will be okay. And he said, Rav Shalom Shadron said, I have no idea how a boat ride on the ocean is going to help my son. But the Gadol told me, so I did it. I took my son, I put him on a boat, sick as he was with fever, and I kept repeating to myself, mitzvah lishmoa divrei chachamim. It's a mitzvah to listen to the rabbi's words. And I said it, and I said it, and I said it. We finished the boat ride, and I looked down on my son, and all of a sudden he started feeling better. And his illness literally vanished into thin air. Here in the Eitz HaChaim, he explains, what is Yosef HaTzadik saying? Anuchi e'esech dvarecha. I will do like you told me. You know what Yosef is saying? Yosef is saying, how am I going to do it? You're asking for something impossible to leave Mitzrayim. But you know how I'm going to do it? Anuchi, I will be able to do it because I'm doing your words, Tati. I'm doing your words, Father. Yaakov, you're telling me to do it. I'm going to believe that you told me to do it, and since you told me to do it, I will be capable of doing it. In what zechut can I do something? In the zechut of doing the will of Yaakov Avinu. It takes us further a step. Here he shares a story from Rav Elimelech Biderman Shlita, the big mashpia. He says there was once a group of seminary girls who came to Tzafat with their teacher, and they were there for Shabbat, and they came upstairs to pray, and there were a lot of ladies that day, and children and everything, and a lot of men downstairs. And one of the teachers had a front row, by the window, right? And she said she was praying, and all of a sudden her child came, pushed her, so her hands let go of the siddur, and the siddur fell down. And it was a heavy leather-bound siddur, and she was worried. So after prayer, she comes downstairs to find her siddur, see what happened. And she sees that a man who looks like a Baal Tshuva walking over to her. And he says, maybe this is the siddur you're looking for. She says, yeah. He says, let me tell you, I came in late to the shul today, and there were no siddurim, and there was no siddur left. And I said, Hashem, please, I just want to daven to you. And all of a sudden, a siddur, as soon as I finish saying that, from Shamayim, falls down right into my hand. And Baruch Hashem, I had a siddur.
But the players are empty. They're gone.
There's another Maisa over here. He brings the Eitz HaChaim. Rav Pinchas Jacobs says the story. He says it was the father who used to go to every Rosh Hashanah to a certain shul, and he used to take his oldest son with him. And one year, his younger son, who that year was 8 years old, begged his father, let me go for Shaharit Musaf. It's a long prayer. The father said, I don't know. And the oldest son said, listen, Tati, I know he doesn't know how to daven well, but I will say every single word, and he'll listen, and this way he'll come. And so he brought his son and his younger son, and the older son did exactly like that. He took the mahzor and he was reading word for word so his younger son can hear it, the younger brother can hear it. After Rosh Hashanah and after Yom Kippur, a man who was sitting on the same table walks over to the father and says, I need to tell you something. This is the first time after 20 years that I came to Beit Knesset for Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur. And I was scared to come because I don't know how to daven. But I said, Hashem, you know that I want to do the right thing. And I came to shul and I didn't know what I'm going to do. I don't understand. I can't read. And all of a sudden, your son was reading word for word outside from the mahzor. And I was able to read it with him and say word for word. Right, there's the famous mashal. We've said it many times. There was this king who made a challenge to his kingdom. He promised that whoever would climb up to the 100th floor and a certain amount of time would receive a great reward. And everyone tried, and they got to the 48th, 49th, and no one was able to go further. They had like a minute left, and they all just stopped. Impossible to get up. But there's one guy, even though he had a minute left, he continued to go. He got up to the 50th floor. And what does he find in the 50th floor? He finds an elevator. And the elevator takes him up and he gets there right in time. And the king says, why did you go up? Did you know the elevator was there? He said, no. So why did you do it? He said, if the king told me to do it, then it must be possible. This is what we're learning. This is the Seforno on these words. Anochi esech dvarecha. Yosef Tzaddik says, I don't know how you want me to get it out. How you want me to get you out of Mitzrayim? You can't. It's not allowed. But esech dvarecha. I'm going to be able to do because you, Yaakov, commanded me to do that. In all these stories that we went through, a person wanted to really do what Hashem wants him to do. He wanted to daven. He needed a siddur. A siddur from Shemayim came. He didn't know how to read. So someone next to him was reading out loud. When a person really wants to do the will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, right? I think this puts another spin on what it means if there's a will, there's a way. That means if you really want to do it, Anochi exists. Right? Anochi esechin varecha. I want to do what Hashem you told me to do. And Hashem will make it possible for it to get done. The Mishnah in Avot says, Hu haya omer, lo alecha hamelacha ligmor. It's not on you to finish the job. V'lo ata ben horin libatel mimena. But no one is free to not do it. Because the truth is, the job is very hard to do because it's a lot to finish. And realistically, naturally, it's probably impossible to do. But your job is not to figure out how to complete it. Your job, our job, is to know that if Hashem told us to do it, then we're going to do it. And the Hatzlacha would come. Right? There was this king. And he gave somebody a ladle. Right? You used to dish out the soup. And he told him, here's a bucket. I want you to fill up the bucket using this ladle. And every time you use the ladle, I'll give you $10. So the man takes the bucket, takes the ladle, and he starts pouring it in. And then he realizes the bucket has a hole. So he says, I'm never going to be able to finish it. And he knocks it over. So someone walking by says, what's going on? He says, the king told me to give me $10 for every ladle to fill up the bucket. I'm filling up the bucket. The bucket has a leak. It's never going to finish. And he says to him, Tibish, that's good. Because if it never finishes, you keep getting another $10. You can keep getting all the money that you need. Because you're going to keep putting it in, and it'll never finish. This, Rabotai, is the gift that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us. Anochi esechid varecha. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you told me to do it. It's an impossible job. I can't finish it. But I know through you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I have the hatzlacha to do what I need to do. Anochi esechid varecha. Okay, let's move on to our third and final lesson on this week's Parashat. I know we're not going to get past the Rishon. There's just so much in there that it's hard to even look through the rest of the Parashat.
Oh, wait, the elevator's coming.
Where's that Hashem? So, as the story continues, Yaakov is getting sick. Yosef hears. He takes his two sons, and he wants to get a bracha from Yaakov Avinu. And they tell Yaakov. Yaakov sits up. And then Yaakov tells Yosef, you should know that that I know that I'm supposed to have another bracha. That Hashem appeared to me, Beluz, and He gave me a bracha, and He said, L'kahal amim, that you're going to become an extra congregation, and He wants to give Ephraim and Asher bracha. But before He gives the bracha, right? He says they're like Reuben and Shimon. And then he says, all of the men stand in the middle of this whole thing, because later he's going to actually give the bracha. In the middle of this whole conversation of Yosef coming to get the bracha, Yaakov Avinu is saying, I have the bracha for you. All of a sudden, Yaakov Avinu says, Va'ani, bevo'i mi Padan. When I was coming from Padan, Rachel died, and she was on the road, and I left her on the road, and I buried her on the road. What does this all have to do with Yosef coming to get the bracha from Menashe and Ephraim? It's right in the middle of the whole thing, and then he blesses them right after that whole speech. What is going on? So Rashi tells us famously, Yaakov Avinu is telling Yosef, I'm apologizing to you. Why? I'm asking you to do the impossible, get me out of Mitzrayim and bury me in Eretz Yisrael. But when your mother passed away on the road, and she wasn't so far away from a city, I buried her on the road. But you should know that I buried her not because I didn't care and I just left her on the road. Like HaKadosh Baruch Hu said I should bury her there. That she should be a help and an advocate for her children when they will eventually be exiled from Eretz Yisrael. Harashal Shadron explains what was really going on here. He explains, this is our third lesson from Shalom Shadron, and from three different sources. So this is a week of Shalom Shadron. He says as follows. Yosef is now, what's happening to Yosef? Yosef is becoming two, right? In the bracha, he's going to get Ephraim and Asher, going to become two Shvatim. It's really the bracha of the Bechor, right? You think about it, the Bechor is supposed to get double. Everyone gets one portion, the Bechor, the oldest one gets two. Shalom Shadron says, what happens here that Yosef Tzaddik is getting it? This will explain the whole parasha why it's this way. He says, why did Reuven lose it? Why did Reuven lose it? Why did Reuven lose the Bechor? Reuven decided that when something didn't look right to him, right, Rachel Imenu passes, instead of Yaakov Avinu putting his main tent with Leah, he goes and he puts it with one of the other shifchot, one of the shifchot of Rachel. And Leah gets upset, Reuben gets upset, and what does he do? He moves around the bed. He lost his Bechor status because a challenge came up against what his father did, and he took it in his own hands to do something about it. He had complaints, and he went and he did something without accepting his father's decree. Yaakov Avinu says, I'm about to give your sons, I'm about to give you the firstborn right, giving you two blessings, making your two sons two shvatim. But you know why, Yosef? Because your mother died on the road, and you never complained to me why I didn't bury her in the proper place. Because you didn't complain to me, you get the double status. You get the double portion. And that's why he explains that. Now I'll explain to you why it was like that, even though you never asked. Now I'll explain it to you because Hashem told me to leave her there. Yosef HaTzadik, by not complaining about what his father did, was a chet to this special bracha of becoming the firstborn. You see, why do people complain? People complain because they think they understand the situation. They think they know better. A lot of people think they know better, right? Everybody knows better than the rabbi. This is 100%. Everybody knows better than the rabbi. Everybody knows better whoever's in charge. This is the way the world is. Until you get in charge, and then you realize that it's not as easy as it looks. It's not as easy. It's backseat driving is always easy, right? The backseat driver can always tell you, go here, go there, go this, do that. That's always easy.
Why you go like that?
Right, why are you going this way? Why are you going that way? Until you sit on the front seat and you start to drive, it's a whole different world, right? When you take charge, when you're in the person in charge. But Yosef Tzaddik realizes that I don't understand everything. The truth is, none of us understand anything because HaKadosh Baruch Hu is running this world. And everything is all concealed. But we have to understand that we can't complain and we can't something doesn't sit right with us. Or some people just complain about anything. And just complain. It hurts them a little bit, they already complain. I want to say over a famous maaseh, a famous story that happened in Krakow, Poland. In Krakow lived a very large Jewish community, and many of them were big Talmidei Chachamim. Many great scholars lived there. But there also lived, like in the rest of Europe, many poor Jews with very little money. It was very hard to get into any businesses there. A lot of laws against the Jews working. And lived in Krakow a certain Jew by the name of Yisrael. And Yisrael was a rich man. He was extremely rich. But there was one thing about him. They called him, he had a last name, but no one called him by his last name. They called him Yisrael Goy. Why they call him a goy? Because when anyone came for him tzedakah, he would say, I'm sorry, I can't. very politely, he would never give. Never ever gave tzedakah. He was the most richest man in town. And he never gave tzedakah. People hated the guy. They called him Israel Goy. They had nothing to do with him. And everybody was against him. But, as we learned already, everybody's end comes, right? Death is certain or not certain, depending on the way we learn. This man, Yisrael Goy, was passing away. He was dying. And so the Chevra Kedusha came to him and said, listen, we need to bury you. There's expenses. We'd like you to pay for expenses. They give him the bill. Right? It's a large amount. He says, listen, first of all, I already have my own shrouds. Tachichim already prepared. I have everything prepared. All I need is a spot. And what you're charging me is highway robbery. The guy's on a deathbed. And he's negotiating the price. Right? He brings it down. He says, I don't even need a good spot. Any spot in the Jewish burial plot, that's what I need. And he brings down the price significantly. Chavik Kedusha says, listen, but the money is going to go to tzedakah. It's going to be used for poor people. It's going to be for you. He says, no, they can't argue with him. They take the money he gives, a small little amount, and they sign the papers. He passes away, and you can imagine, to get a minyan to go to his burial, extremely hard. No one wants to go. Finally, after the Chachamim begging people to come, they finally got a minyan. They buried him. No hespedim, no eulogies, nothing. That Thursday, after they buried him, and by the way, he said, when he told the Chavik Kedusha, when you bury me, make sure the tombstone says Yisrael Goy. That's what I want on it. So that Thursday, after he passes away, lived in that city, the famous tzaddik who wrote a pirush, Tosfot Yom Tov, who wrote a pirush on Mishnayot. His name was Harav Yom Tov Lipa Heller, Zecha Tzaddik L'Bracha. All of a sudden on his door, on Tosfot Yom Tov's door comes a knock, Thursday afternoon. A man knocks on the door and says, Rabbi, I need money to buy Shabbat, to buy stuff for Shabbat. So the tzaddik says, of course. He goes to his discretionary funds, has a couple of dollars, takes it out and gives it to the man. He goes back to learning. 5 minutes later, another knock. Someone, again, another poor person asking for tzedakah. And this happens 20 times, again and again and again. And he says, 1 second, what happened? All of a sudden, everyone came poor today? Nobody has money anymore? What happened? So the next poor person who comes, which came 5 minutes again later, says, now I'm not giving you until you tell me, what did you do up until this week? And it says to the Yom Tov, he says to the Tosfot Yom, he says, listen, truth is, I used to go to the grocery, buy whatever I wanted on credit, and then next week I would come and all my credit was paid off. I never asked the grocer who paid it. Nothing. It's a gift horse. You never look the gift horse in the mouth. You don't want to see where it's coming from. It might disappear. So I didn't look. And every week it went away. And I was able to buy. But this week I came. And the grocer tells me I can't take any more on credit. So a few more people come. He asks the same question. They tell him the exact same thing. So now Rav Yom Tov Lipa Heller gets the other Rabbanim. And he summons all the grocers to his house. So they tell the grocers, what happened? All these weeks we heard that you were giving on credit, and all of a sudden this week not. So they're saying, they're trying to. The Rabbanim say, listen, you have to tell us what is going on. We need to know. It's impossible. So many poor people all of a sudden. So one of the grocers said, listen, the truth is, we're not allowed to say. But since you're commanding us, the man who just died this week, Yisrael Goy, every week he would come into our stores and ask us what the poor people bought on credit, and he would pay it completely off. Every single week. But he made us promise that we can never tell anyone. He says, now that he died, no one's coming to pay it off. We can't give anybody credit anymore. There's no one helping paying it off. When the Tosfot Yom Tov heard this, and all the Chachamim heard this in the town, they were aghast. They couldn't believe it. Here they were living in Krakow for so many years, and they looked at this Yisrael guy, and they thought he was a guy. They didn't give any money. They hated him. No one showed up to his Yulid. No one showed up to anything. To his husband, to his Levi, no one came. Because they all felt that he was a good for nothing. They just had complaints about somebody without thinking further. What's the situation? Or how it's coming, why it's coming. When Rav Yom Tov heard this, he immediately declared a public fast day. Everybody had to fast on the Shloshim, the 30 days after he passed away. And when they put up the matzeh, when they put up the tombstone, the Tosfot Yom Tov said we have to add one word to what he said. He said to write my name Yisrael Goy, even though he had a different last name. He said write Yisrael Goy, people called me. The Tosfot Yom Tov said we're going to add one word, Kadosh, at the end. Yisrael Goy Kadosh. Yisrael, from the holy nation. So much so that Rav Yom Tov, Tosfot Yom Tov said that when he passes away, he wants to be buried right next to this Yisrael Goy Kadosh. Rabotai, the lesson from this story is, you see somebody, and you think you know them, you think you understand them, but you should know you don't know them. And I'll prove it to you, because you don't know yourself. Right? How do I know you don't know yourself? Because what says, don't trust in yourself to the day of death. Why can't you trust in yourself? Because you do not even know yourself. If you don't know yourself, how can you even think you know someone else? That's why Yosef HaTzadik never complained to Yaakov, why you buried my mother on the side of the road. How can I understand anything? But Reuven, who thought he understood everything, and switches around the beds, he loses the firstborn status. And Yosef HaTzadik gets it. So to quickly review our 3 lessons on this week's parasha. First thing, we learned, yes, death and taxes are certain, but death is only certain if we don't leave over tzaddikim, we don't leave over people who follow in the path of Gedolim and tzaddikim. But if we go in the path, Yaakov lo met, Yaakov did not pass away. And that is our job. And then we learn, Anochi esech varecha, that how can we do anything? Is if we go in the way of Hashem. If Hashem tells us to do something, and we say, Hashem, it's impossible, but you know how I'll do it? I'll do my part, and Hashem, you're going to help me with the rest. And our final lesson on this week's parasha was, the truth is, we don't understand anybody, we don't understand anything. Our job is to do our job, to believe in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to understand everything He does is for good, and to really, really be DKLZ, right? Dan lekav zechut, Dan lekav zechut, DLKZ, right? Dan lekav zechut to everyone, because we really don't understand. We don't understand ourselves. We don't understand people. We don't understand what's going on in the world. The best thing is not to complain, but rather understand, help, and do what we need. And with this, with these 3 lessons, we should take them and put them into our lives, apply them, and may HaKadosh Baruch Hu bless us many, many times more. Shabbat Shalom L'Kulam.